An ugly win is still a win, right? Yes, welcome on into the Pac-12 Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and let's dive right into it. Saturday night in Corvallis, Fresno State walked out of Riser Stadium with a 36-27 win over Oregon State, their first one since 1991. But let's be real, folks, and I think if you watch the game, you're also going to feel the same way. This wasn't a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination. It was ugly. For a lack of a better term, it was ugly. It was sloppy and it was chaotic, but it was also kind of gritty and opportunistic. An opportunistic win for Fresno State that can really change the direction of a season and completely switch one for a complete other as well. Today, I want to break this down in two parts, and then, of course, talk about Fresno State with their gutsy win, talk about how Oregon State gave this game away with mental mistakes, special team blunders, and then I want to finish this show with talking about why you should actually maybe hang your hat on Utah State, even though they did lose to a ranked Texas A&M school. I liked some things that I saw, and I want to dig into that. If you hit the subscribe button, we're going to continue to build up this new Pac-12 and this new fandom here. So if you are a fan of any of the new Pac-12 teams or the OGs with Washington State and Oregon State, hit that subscribe button because we are bringing you coverage every single day. The Fresno State game, ugly but promising win for Fresno State over Oregon State. And there's no such thing as a bad win, but it was ugly as it gets. And Fresno should, they should embrace it. And Coach Matt Entz said there are ugly wins, but there's not a bad win. And I completely agree with that. But when you look at the ugliness behind it, and I'm really just talking about the ugliness on paper, they were outgained 528 yards to 318. They only had 15 first downs to Oregon State's 30. They still found ways to score in all three phases. I'll give you that. Offense, defense, special teams. But overall, it was just an ugly but yet gritty win for Fresno State. Oregon State couldn't get rid of them. They let Fresno State hang around. And ultimately, that was demise for Oregon State, and Fresno State got the win. What I love about this for Fresno State is that they continued to show their identity is the running game. And you got a little bit of E.J. Warner actually getting a mix into that as well, had a big run. He really stepped up and proved that the running game is what Fresno State's going to be all about. And I absolutely think that they need to continue that throughout the entire season. I brought up last time we talked about Fresno State how I think E.J. Warner is a liability, and it's really for a lack of a better term. He threw another interception. He did have a nice rush. He did have a nice 40-yard rush for a touchdown. That's a good thing. Coach Entz did give him a shout-out for his two-minute drive on offense, but he hasn't thrown a touchdown yet in the 3 games he's played. That's something that should be seen as a concern. If you can't get your running game going like it happened against KU in the first game of the season, you are completely one-dimensional, and that one dimension's not working, and you need to find a way to get it to work. You need to get something with that passing game a little bit more. And what I want to see from E.J. Warner is him to get this passing game going, but maybe just be a little bit more upbeat but not aggressive. And what I mean by that is find some short passes just to try and move the sticks. I don't want to see E.J. Warner throwing the football farther than 15, 20 yards, I think, ever, because it seems like 50 to 75% of the time that he does that, it involves a turnover or an overthrow. He's just not a quarterback that is good at throwing the deep ball. And that's okay because he has a great running game to support him. If he can utilize the passing properly around him with short dumps and crosses along the middle, as long as he's not getting rolled out to the left or right side under pressure, maybe getting some throws to the out routes, I have no problem with that. And I think that's actually where you should live if you're Fresno State for the rest of the season, as long as E.J. Warner is your quarterback. The running game was interesting for Fresno State this week, and it was not because of that's where they went to. The reason that I say it was interesting is because we didn't see a lot of Bryson Donaldson. He only had 7 carries for 34 yards. He looked like he was banged up a little bit. Coach didn't seem like it was a big deal in the presser afterwards, so that's a good sign. So hopefully we'll see him. This is somebody who was leading the country in rushing yards just last week. Rayshon Luke stepped up big time, though. His speed is immaculate, and he should have a lot more yards than he did. He actually had one called back, but 12 carries, 86 yards, and he had one for 44 yards for a touchdown. EJ Warner had that 30-yard, I think I said 40, it was earlier, it was a 30-yard rush for a touchdown. He had 3 carries for 57 yards. And overall, they were just shy of by a yard for 200 yards rushing. They had 199 yards rushing on the day. You got to love that. You got to love that. Josiah Freedom, 82 yards receiving. That is the guy that needs to be EJ Warner's best friend. If they're not rooming right now, they need to pack their stuff up and find a dorm together, because that's exactly where they need to be living for the rest of the season. EJ Warner and Josiah Freeman need to be best friends, inseparable. Because I think if they get on the same page and you can get the passing game just a little bit better, Fresno State is going to be considered a top dog in the Mountain West this year. I could totally see it happening if this rushing game continues to excel and EJ Warner just gets a little bit better and stops trying to force it and cause those interceptions. He doesn't have to throw touchdown passes because his running game is so good. He has 3 or 4 weapons out of the backfield that can get the pay dirt, but he has to get them there to make it happen. He has to keep the drives moving. If they do run into a 2nd and long or a 3rd and long situation, he has to make sure that this offense, this running game, can continue to stay on the field so they can score points. That didn't always happen in this one, but Oregon State, again, let them stick around, and it made it happen. EJ Warner only had 13 for 18 for 121 yards in this one. That's not going to lose you football games, but you're not going to win big by any stretch of the imagination with those type of numbers from EJ Warner. If that's your best selection, if that's what the best you have, then so be it. And you're 2-1 right now if you're only lost to a Big 12 school, a Power 4 school in Kansas, who looks like a pretty good team this year. Probably will be towards the top of that conference. So if that is your only loss heading into conference play, then you're in a pretty good spot if you're Fresno State. And I think getting this win against Oregon State was absolutely huge. It was a big deal to make sure you got this one. And it's exactly what you did. So Fresno State gets a big win here. I like what they did. They now have to face Southern. That should be another way to complete another statement. Then they have Hawaii on the island. They got to go travel to Hawaii. And that's when they start their Mountain West run. And hopefully they can continue to make it a buildup. I'm excited to see the game later on in the season between them and Boise State in Boise. I think that could be a game that possibly decides the leader of the Mountain West Conference before we get to the championship weekend. On the flip side, though, the Oregon State Beavers are in a very rough spot, and they kind of did it to themselves. Let's do that next, right here on the Pac-12 Daily Podcast. Well, you can be stat kings, but that doesn't matter if you're scoreboard losers, and that's exactly what happened with Oregon State in this one. As we mentioned in the first segment, outgained Fresno State by over 200 yards, but because of the blunders, because of the mental mistakes, they wind up losing this one. I mean, it got so bad that we had head coach Trent Bray swearing, throwing the F-bomb out on the national broadcast at halftime. I actually appreciated that, for the record. I actually liked his aggressiveness and his not afraid to show emotion. I actually really respected that. But this just shows that things are going downhill very fast for the Oregon State Beavers. Maalik Murphy, I mean, with the exception of his 2 interceptions, one of them is at the end of the game that happened to be a pick 6. And I don't really count that one towards the box score too much, because you're just trying to make something work. You're trying to make a play happen. But overall, 371 yards, 4 touchdowns, huge bounce back from week 1 against Cal. I really liked what Maalik Murphy did there. And this is a guy that comes in from Duke, was very highly sought from other programs. He chooses Oregon State. And it's a shame that happened, because things are falling apart around him. I mean, overall, I think you look at this and you look at Oregon State and you want them to, you think they can be a lot of a better team than they're showing. They are way better of a team than their 0-2 record. There's no doubt in my mind. Anthony Hankerson, a stepped up big time after having one of his career lows in Oregon State uniform and rushing last week against Cal, turns it completely around and goes 25 carries for 136 yards. That's exactly what you need from Anthony Hankerson, the guy who really leads your offense. And if Maalik Murphy and him are firing at all cylinders, plus add a little bit of Trent Walker in there, who just missed the 100-yard receiving club for the second week in a row. He had 7 receptions for 99 yards. If you get those 3 firing, then you're usually in good hands. And all 3 of them are doing well, but you run into those special teams. Also, Taz Reddicks had a great game. 11 receptions, 158 yards from the wide receiver. Maalik Murphy was doing a great job getting it around to everybody. There was multiple people. I mean, I'm talking over 10 different people who had a reception for Oregon State. I think it's actually 11 looking at the box score. That's impressive. That is a good sign to show that there are multiple people who can make plays for Oregon State on the offensive side. The special teams, however, was a complete disaster. I mean, is there a better word for it? It's the worst special teams I have ever seen in a game ever. High school, college, peewee football. I mean, it was really bad. There was 10 penalties total. That's not just special teams, but just mental mistakes, including like false starts, multiple false starts on the same drive. There was misconversions going to the special teams now. You had 2 extra point attempts that were missed. You had 2 failed 2-point conversions that were missed. You had a botched punt snap. Then you kicked that punt while it was on the ground, and then that was returned for a touchdown. As I mentioned earlier, Coach Bray, when he was walking to the locker room at halftime, he said special teams was an F-bomb joke. Right on the air. I mean, you can't get any more blunt than that. But it's true. And in post-game, he kind of doubled back. He did apologize for swearing. Again, I do appreciate his aggressiveness, but he did said, we spotted them 21 points on blunders. And that is completely true. And he's not giving that in hyperbole. He's not over-exaggerating. 21 points is what Oregon State allowed Fresno State to score because of their own mistakes. Oregon State should have scored more points, but even if those 21 points are taken away, you're talking a 27-15 final. Oregon State wins this game. If they have a long snapper, if they have a punter making the right moves, if they step up and do the right thing on special teams, if they don't have stupid false start penalties, they win this game handily. But instead, they lose by 9 points. 10 penalties for 70 yards for Oregon State. Fresno State had 6 for 55, but they didn't seem like they impacted the team as much. Although they were only 15 yards less in penalty yards compared to Oregon State, it seemed like the situations for the Beavers just came at the absolute wrong time for them to happen. Oregon State won the time of possession battle by almost 15 minutes. They still lose this game by 9. It's because of the special teams. That's it. When you go into this game next week, when you're preparing for the game and you're looking at film, there's a lot of things to take positive from this. The offense was great. The defense was not bad. They were iffy in times, especially from stopping the run with Rayshawn Luke. They couldn't stop him. There was a couple plays, and one they got lucky that got called back for penalty that he wasn't even touched, and he was right up the middle. Like it was a 3-hole, A gap, B gap kind of thing, right between the guard and tackle. Absolutely wild. It doesn't get much better for Oregon State, though. Next week, they travel to Lubbock to take on 21st ranked Texas Tech, who, although they've only played really some cupcakes, an FCS school, and Kent State, who is basically an FCS school, are looking like they're the team that everybody thought they were because of all the additions they added in the transfer portal and all the money they spent in the transfer portal this past offseason. That's going to be a tough test. If you can't get past Cal and you can't get past Fresno State, although you should have won that game, you're probably in for a big trouble of a day against Texas Tech. And then, oh, by the way, after that, you're still on the road and you're taking on Oregon, who just put almost 70 points on Oklahoma State this past weekend. How do you feel about Oregon State right now? Do you believe in Trent Bray? Do you think he's the right guy for the job? I mean, his biggest gripes that you hear is that he's a defensive-minded coach. The offense isn't stepping up. The offense really wasn't the problem. this week for Oregon State? Is it is discipline just the biggest reason it needs to get fixed? Is that a coaching staff issue or is that a player issue? A little bit of both. 6 false starts, I mean, many of them being in the red zone, that you just can't have that. You just can't have that. And that's one thing that you can coach and train and condition, but at the same time, those players have to, I mean, we're at the college level, and you have to know that you can't jump off sides, can't have false starts. That loses momentum on back-to-back drive-killing possessions because of those penalties. Coach Bray did admit that those 2 straight weeks of shooting ourselves in the foot, talking about Cal in this past game against Fresno State, you can say that you shot yourself in the foot against Cal, but Cal beat you with the offense that they had, stud freshman quarterback. But this week against Fresno, this past weekend, there's no doubt in my mind that absolutely did happen. This is a program that was supposed to be mentally tough. Instead, they're looking like the most undisciplined team in the Pac-12, in the new Pac-12, not just them in Washington State. That's a reflection on coaching, not just the players, in my opinion. They need to be a lot more disciplined. So, bigger picture, 0-2 start, but they're winnable games. Now, where do you go now? Trent Bray is now 5-9 as the head coach of Oregon State. He already may be defensive in the postgame pressers, as we saw, admitting frustration and mistakes. Maybe that's a good thing, but you got to find a way to fix it quick because your next 2 matchups are against top 25 opponents. And, of course, against Oregon is always a very tough one. It's crazy. Oregon State's biggest rival right now isn't Washington State. It isn't Oregon. It's themselves. It's your biggest rival because you're being undisciplined. You're losing the games yourself. The special teams might be the biggest rival inside of being the rival. And if Trent Bray can't clean this up, then this season is going to go downhill very fast, and it might be Trent Bray's very last as well. Well, going from possibly this very last to going to a first, Bronco Mendenhall of Utah State is changing that program very quickly in my mind. Although they did lose to Texas A&M, I think there are plenty of reasons you should be excited about the way the Aggies are heading. We'll talk about that to finish up this show right here on the Pac-12 Daily Podcast. Utah State went in the College Station as a massive underdog. It was a ranked top 25 matchup for Texas A&M. And yeah, they lost 44-22 to Texas A&M. But here's the thing. For the first time in a long time, it seems, you could actually see the progress for Utah State. I mean, maybe it was just a couple flashes, but the Aggies showed fight, in my opinion, and maybe, just maybe, showed a glimpse of what is possible under Bronco Mendenhall. Of course, we know what Bronco Mendenhall can do in the state of Utah, what he did for 10 seasons in BYU before moving on to other schools, and that might have been the worst thing that he ever did for his coaching career. But now that he's back in Utah, he sounds comfortable, and I think knowing that he's in the spot that he wants to be in the state of Utah, maybe not with BYU, but I think he is happy where he's at, and I think he's going to make some big progress. And you saw it right away on the field. This seems like, even though you lost by 20-something, even though you were down at a big margin at halftime, it never felt like they were giving up on the game. And you didn't see that in the past from some other Utah State teams. Like, you would go into these matchups, if this was a Utah State team from a few years ago, but they would have got down by 30-6, you would have saw complete quit. I didn't see that this game. I saw always the attempt of them trying to play good. Bryson Barnes, I mean, the arm on Bryson Barnes is incredible. And he placed some very nice passes all the way to the end of the game into the receiver's hands to try and continue to make this score up. And it wasn't really ever garbage time, in my opinion, that 44-22, because Utah State was always trying to build it up and set it up. So they walked on the Kyle Field to face this top 20 SEC opponent, knowing that they were double-digit underdogs. Yeah, they did lose by 22. They were doubled up. But I think they outdid the stakes. A&M wanted a tune-up before they got to take on Notre Dame and all that good stuff. But to me, I think this was about Utah State testing themselves against the big boys, if you will. Texas A&M is going to be a good team this year. There's no doubt about that. But I really liked what Bryson Barnes did. As I mentioned, his arm, I think, is incredible. His veteran presence is electric. He just needs a little bit more protection, I think. And if that comes later on in the season, then I wouldn't be surprised if they shock a couple of these teams in the Mountain West this year under the first year of Bronco Mendenhall. Miles Davis coming off a strong game against UTEP, seen as a potential X factor, right? And on the team, I don't think this was just a paycheck game for Utah State. I think this was a nice program statement and not on the box score. But this is something that you can go into meetings, watch the tape, be proud of, build confidence, and raise that meter. That floor of the program has lifted under Bronco Mendenhall already after 2 games. And that's a great feeling to have if you're a Utah State Aggies fan, booster, alumni, or player on the team. 100% in my opinion. The opening drive, the A&M scored first, but Utah State answered right back. And I think that was huge. Them answering right away on a 75-yard drive that was capped by Anthony Garcia hitting Miles Davis for a 4th down touchdown. It was a crazy play to make it happen. It was a little tricky play. Almost didn't happen. The pass was almost incomplete. The momentum kind of fell off a little bit, though, because they did go for 2. They failed, so they never got to tie the ball game. And that missed chance really kind of flipped the momentum just a little bit. You kind of already knew, just like from watching it, that Texas A&M is probably going to pull away eventually. But Utah State stuck around, even though they fell off and was down, I believe, 30-6 at halftime. They made some nice comebacks, nice stretches in the second half. I really did. I really did think that happened. The turning point, in my opinion, though, there's a little bit of trench problems, and Bronco Mendenhall stepped up. Like they said that A&M was better than them. They beat them in all phases of the game. Sure, I mean, that's fine. But I think there's still a couple great silver linings you can take from Utah State heading into the rest of the season after playing a game like this against a ranked opponent, when you are building, obviously, the program with bringing back Bronco Mendenhall year 1 into the system. Miles Davis had a breakout game, 50 rushing yards plus 2 touchdown catches, showing he can be more than just a runner, which I really appreciate, that veteran presence yet again. Brady Boyd had a career day, 6 catches, 87 yards. I mean, having a reliable target like him, Barnes and Boyd's, I'll take it. John Miller had 7 tackles and a sack. And the defense really stepped up. Brevin Hamblin had a team high with 8 tackles. So even in a loss, you saw individual guys flashing, the kind of performance you can build that team around. That's that confidence meter. That's that floor rising. And you absolutely need to see that happen. So what's next? You got Air Force and the path forward. Coach Mendenhall, what I did like about it too is he took full responsibility for the loss, admitted A&M won in all 3 phases and put the spotlight on the offensive line. So not only did he see that it's just a team to say, oh, you can be proud of this loss, although he might be proud of his guys, and I think he should be, but he did point out directly that there are going to be some concerns that they're going to work on right away. And that's a great thing to have. Having film against a Power 4 school, an SEC school like this, finding some success, and especially in this new portal window where you're trying to build and have retention and build a culture, if you find certain guys that stepped up in this game, those are the guys you want to build your culture around. So perfect time. Air Force is next. And if you can stop the run and protect your quarterback, I think you have a good chance of winning that football game and build that momentum and get a win, another win on the season. So I think the effort's there. I think there's hope. I think the playmakers are emerging and the coach is owning the mistakes, which are you surprised? Bronco Mendenhall is a class act. He's one of the best coaches as an active college football, especially when it comes to the winning record as of right now. So Utah State shows us growth, and I think that's important when you're looking at some of these early matchups when you are playing teams that you may be seen as inferior to. And if they can clean up the trenches, because he pointed the offensive line, I think it's on both sides of the ball, but if they can do that and keep feeding guys like Miles Davis, Brady Boyd, if Barnes can continue to throw absolute dimes like he did in a good amount of this game, I think this team can absolutely contend in the Mountain West this year, in the first year of Bronco Mendenhall. I don't know if they'll be at the very top. I think there's still another tier above them, but contending, maybe surprise somebody, shock somebody, who knows? You could find yourself there in year 1 under Bronco. All right, folks, that'll do it for the Pac-12 Daily Podcast today. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Leave some comments wherever you're listening, and we're trying to grow this, so hit that subscribe button once again. And if you are listening and you're a new Pac-12 fan, even if it's not a team we talked about today, we're going to start covering every single one as we get through this. Drop a comment and let us know who you're rooting for. We'll see you back here next time. Take care.